11 participants.
Okay, we're good.
We're good now?
Sorry about that.
All right. If you're not hearing us again, raise or ping one of the board members. So, good. Yeah. Are we good? Are we good, Tara?
We're good.
There we go. Good. The other thing I'd just like to speak to, since this has happened since we last met, and it's unfortunate, but we've not lost another young person. Henry Farmer, a 10th grader, passed away over the April break. Henry was a quiet leader, loved sports, hockey and golf. He was considered a role model up at the high school and had an incredible work ethic, good sportsmanship, and a zest for life. Our community, as always, came together to support Henry, his family, his friends, and the administration of the district with town hall did a lot to provide the support that was needed for our students. So we do come together as a community, and it speaks volumes to the fabric of our community when we come together like this. And unfortunately, it's happened twice in a very short period of time. So just a moment and just an extension from the board directly of our thoughts and prayers with the Farmer family and all of their friends and family. Thank you for that. We will move on to public comment. This evening on the agenda, we have our regular public comment, which I would ask be, as always, kind of focused on our agenda or specific school items. And then we have a public hearing, which is also public comment around the ongoing conversation of the lights usage and the change in the special permit and the zoning application. So the first public comment will kind of be our normal public comment, which we'll also have at the end of the meeting. So anything pertaining to the lights, if you could hold for the public hearing portion of it, that would be appreciated. Thank you. So Michelle, we'll go to regular public comment and we'll start with folks in the audience.
For participants in person, please wait for the chairperson to acknowledge and call each participant to the microphone. For participants via Zoom, please click the raise hand option. The facilitator will acknowledge and unmute each participant. For all participants, please state your name and address for the record log. Each participant will have up to 3 minutes to comment.
So anyone in the audience for public comment for our regular agenda? Sure, please come up to the podium. Thank you.
So nice to see all your faces. First of all, I just wanted to thank you all for approving the budget for the DEI team, because I think we're making some progress. I'm very proud to be a part of that. I think it's going really well. I hope Chris feels the same way. And it's really sparking conversation from the networks that we are being asked to reach out to beyond that team. So I'm here to thank you for that. And I'm also here to share that we are having the first inaugural Darien Pride Rally on June 12th at Tilly Pond Park with the support of the Corbin District and Baywater Properties in partnership with the Depot. It's going to be a family event from noon to 4, and I'm just here to invite you. So we'll have food trucks and bands, and we'll dance, and we'll have a really good time. And especially with everything the community's been through, it's kind of nice to be able to look forward to coming together. So we hope you all join us.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking.
Oh,
Name and address.
oh yeah, Krista Carnes, 40 Fitch Avenue. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else on public comment in audience? Sure, thank you.
Amy Zerby, 9 Morehouse Drive. Due to the COVID pandemic, students are facing the worst mental health crisis that we have seen in our lifetime. Their mental health should be your priority. Let that sink in. I remind you of this because I see the emergence of yet another politically motivated attack on our education, teachers, and marginalized students. In addition to identifying the teaching of CRT, DEI, and SEL as indoctrination, one political party is now attacking education on sex and gender, as well as demonizing the LGBTQ community. This homophobic movement is a ploy to win elections and aims to censor our education and infringe upon the academic freedom of our teachers and students. Politics is once again targeting marginalized kids in the name of parental rights. This has been a challenging year for schools across the country as students grapple with academic, social, and mental health issues in addition to the loss of friends and family members. Our Darien community has not only suffered from pandemic-related mental health issues, but we are also processing several deaths that have hit our community hard. High school students walk around school shell-shocked as the school has been devastated by 2 student deaths within 2 weeks. We are once again placing hockey sticks outside of our homes, just as we did a few months earlier when a well-known student from another high school passed away. People who identify as LGBTQ have always been targets of hate and fear. The community has made strides regarding inclusivity, validation, and acceptance, but renewed hatred and fear are rising as they are targeted by a political party simply for who they are and who they love. It is also worth noting that the local homophobic movement aligns with the announcement of Darien's first Pride celebration, which is a celebration of love and acceptance for all. Unfortunately, the focus on helping students has been diminished as the district administration and the Board of Head are forced to deal with politically manufactured crises as well as endless FOIA requests. 7 months ago, mental health measures were overshadowed by an attack on our schools in coordination with the launching of a political campaign. The Board of Ed rejected open choice in part because you wanted to get our house in order. This Don't Say Gay movement will hinder getting our house in order. Don't play into it, reject the hate, reject the fear, and focus on our students' needs. Thank you.
Thanks for speaking this evening. Anyone else in the audience? Michelle, anyone with their hand up on the world of Zoom?
There are no raised hands.
All right, thank you. Move on to the superintendent's report, Dr. Adley.
Yes, good evening, everyone. And you certainly understand that if I pay a few other additional comments on behalf of administration and our staff on Henry's tragic and sudden passing. He was a young sophomore enjoying his high school experience with his classmates and also his teammates. Among other things, Henry will be remembered for his welcoming smile, his passion, his sense of humor, and his positive outlook on life when he touched the lives of his fellow students. We will continue to uplift the Farmer family at this difficult time. Thank you once again to the greater Darien community for your outreach and for support for our students. Once again, there's no easy transition from that, so you'll forgive me and understand as I go on to other comments. I will say I try to coordinate our re-announcements with our student reps this evening, so it's a wee work in progress that I don't steal their thunder, so I'll share mine and they will share theirs. As the board's chair just announced, it was thrilling to see that the US News and World Report just released the 2022 rankings of best high schools in Connecticut, and I'm thrilled on behalf of our students, our staff, and our community to announce that Darien High School is ranked #1 in Connecticut. Congratulations to the entire students and staff, primarily around college readiness and performance criteria. Also over the break, the district received the notice that it's been recognized yet again as the 2022 Best Communities for Music Education by the NAM Foundation. I also want to pass on our congratulations to our high school young engineers and science students who competed in the teams competition that traditionally that has been called, I believe, over the years here, JETS. But the team placed second in the state and we're top 25 teams in the nation. The team qualified for the national competition that will be held at the end of June. So again, congratulations to our team members and also thanks to their advisor, Mr. Dan Record. If you had an opportunity to see the Dallas Brass concert, it was truly a wonderful and uplifting experience on Friday night. They both entertained. Did I steal your thunder there?
No.
Oh, you were looking at me.
I'm smiling and happy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you performed extremely well in it.
You may break out in song for us. You never know.
It was an absolutely phenomenal concert, both by Dallas Brass, but also by our young people. The elementary band was represented, the middle school band was represented, the high school band was represented. It just was truly phenomenal. So thank you to Mrs. Thompson and anyone else who was organizing the event, and also those members of the community who helped sponsor this wonderful learning experience. Last Friday, April 22nd, the middle school welcomed Dr. Tom McMorrin. Tom is an interim principal for the remainder of the school year. Dr. Morton has extensive experience as a middle school and high school teacher, building administrator, and superintendent of schools. Simultaneously, I'll take the moment to offer our congratulations and best wishes to Dr. Rodriguez, the principal, and also on getting her doctoral degree on the same week that she gave birth to her son, Jack, and also on the birth of Mrs. Hutchins' son, Sammy. So congratulations. There's a lot of things going on at the middle school. Thank you. Smarter Balance testing started this week at the middle school. The ELA testing went smoothly today. Elementary begins next week, and the testing will go through the third week in May. Our third graders completed their visits to the Historical Society last week. I look to join our fifth graders when they visit in the upcoming week. We did have our, just as a member of the community mentioned, our third DEI meeting last week with Mr. Shelton in district. We have 2 more scheduled before the end of the school year. And just as we recognize the performance of the schools, next week we look forward to celebrating our staff, teaching staff, and our support staff during National Teacher Appreciation Week. In advance of that week, we extend our gratitude for the remarkable work that they do every day. Let me say, first of all, for caring for our students. Then after that, and delivering an exceptional educational experience that they continue to do during this pandemic. On Thursday, this coming Thursday, 7 p.m. Ox Ridge, Dr. McGettigan, who is our Director of Instructional Technology, will present the last in the PTO series of parenting young children in a digital age, post-COVID. So if you're interested in that, that's open to all elementary parents. And just by way of comment, Connecticut has started its work on getting all districts on board with the Future Readiness Technology Plan. And I'm pleased to share that Darien's plan has been used as an exemplar in that work. And finally, we had storm last Tuesday, just when we thought things were over. Hindley and Royal will have to do a makeup day for the loss of power. That will be a half day on June 20th. And the last day for those teachers will be on June 21st. That's all my announcement, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Adley. We'll move on to the appointment of the Tokenique School Assistant Principal. That is Kat Brunswick. I think Kat's here with us this evening. Hi, Kat. How are you? Good. How are you? Good. Anything you would like to say to us? Please. Thank you. Thanks for coming this evening. Sure.
I'd like to thank you, Dr. Adley, Dr. Tranberg, Ms. Shirley Klein, Ms. Marge Zion, Kristen O'Reilly, Scott McCarthy, and the Board of Education for this appointment. I am thrilled to continue working with the students, families, and staff at Tokenique. It is a great honor and privilege to be part of such a wonderful community. I would also like to thank Ryan Betts, principal of Tokenique, Kathy Schultz, assistant principal, and Mary Michelson, former principal of Tokenique, for their continued guidance and support and mentorship this past year. To the staff of Tokenique, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your continued dedication to the students and families, especially these past 2 years, has been impressive and remarkable. I am blessed to call you my colleagues, and I'm forever grateful to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Clearly, you want to move this along. I get it. Thank you, Kat. Thanks for coming this evening, and we're very excited to have you continue to be part of the Tokenique family over there. At Dr. Adley's urging, may I have a motion to appoint Kathleen Brunswick as Assistant Principal of Tokenique Elementary School, Mrs. McCammon, second by Mrs. Achman. All those in favor? That is unanimous with all those present. Thank you. Congratulations.
We have to be there at 6 o'clock tomorrow, so I'm suggesting that you may want to leave.
Take care. Thanks again. Good luck. We will move on, Dr. Adley, and our student representative reports. Olivia and John, good evening. Good to have you here.
Good evening. On our agenda to share today. Our student council elections come up tomorrow, so
Can
we'll
you
have.
do me a favor? Just I think it'd be best if you move that microphone to right in front of you. And then we'll get two microphones going forward since there's two people sitting there. Mr. DeMayo? Go ahead, Olivia.
Jane, malfunction.
Yes, right.
Our student council elections are coming up tomorrow, which means so we'll have our new student community council, new president, everything. Should be by the end of the school day tomorrow.
Barring any runoff elections, and which sometimes happens. Student council is holding their annual movie night on Friday. They're showing Cars, which will be fun. There'll be all you can eat colony pizza for all of you DHS students who have not already been hearing it on the announcements every day.
Us as the student representatives, we've just been appointed as official members of the community council. So we'll have our first meeting with our student government this Friday.
AP testing starts this Monday.
Our prom tickets additionally just went up for sale for juniors and seniors because our senior prom is in, I think, 3 weeks. It's the 13th, and then junior prom is the 21st.
This is a bigger announcement. The Spain trip just finished. So first, I would like to thank Ms. Mauricio and all of the chaperones who have graciously volunteered their time to go to Spain, which was a vacation as much for them as it was for us. So it was a lot of fun. We went to 6 cities in 10 days. We saw places such as the Alhambra, La Girada de Sevilla, Las Ramblas. We also went to a cooking class and went to a flamenco dance show. It was a lot of fun. There was a great balance of both free time and a lot of structured activities through EF, which was our tour group. And we would especially like to stress that the DHS students' deportment was incredible throughout the trip. There were no major infractions of anything.
On the topic of our foreign language department, our language department has its National Honor Society induction tomorrow night, as well as awarding all of our students who have earned the seal of biliteracy. We'll receive those awards tomorrow, and just honoring all of the students who really excelled in our amazing language department.
And finally, DECA Nationals, which are business competitions, currently is happening right now in Atlanta. This is the end of a 4-day program that started on Saturday. So we're really excited that we had several people go. And we're hoping to congratulate them on any of their victories when they come home. That's all we have.
Great. Thank you both. Appreciate that. Mrs. Klein.
May I just add one thing to Olivia and John and Dr. Adley's announcements? Saturday was our youngest athletes, our unified sports athletes. Dr. Forshaw was there with several of the team members from Oxbridge. It was our first time having in the important part of the stadium. What's that called? The important part of the stadium, DHS?
Football field.
No, the big one.
Center Oval. No, it was at the stadium.
Thank you.
Stadium.
The stadium. Okay, just want to get it right.
The
It was at the
stadium.
stadium. So we had our youngest athletes there, and our secondary athletes were there mentoring them. And it was the first time we had the opportunity for all of our unified sports athletes and coaches to be there. It was extraordinary. The weather was kind and generous to all. And it was just a wonderful opportunity. So I just wanted to acknowledge everyone and how well our athletes did. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Klein. I was there, and I will say the turnout was incredible. The way it was set up. Mr. Ribeiro was there. Paul was there, who heads up that program, and just an incredible turnout. And I will say that our students then carried over. Morticia and Adam Gomez from the Adams Family Play sung the national anthem at the kickoff to baseball at the McGuan Field on Sunday. And they sung the national anthem. And again, that was a packed house with the fire trucks transporting some of our kids with special needs in the Challenger program. And again, just another incredible get together. I think it's been 3 years since they've been able to get together and have kind of the baseball kickoff at McGuan Field. So they did a beautiful job singing the national anthem. Thank you, Mrs. Collins. We will move on to approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting and regular meeting held on April 6, 2022. Mr. Sini, second by Mr. Maroney. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Board committee reports. Mr. Sini.
We had a finance committee last Thursday meeting, pretty quick one. There's a few transfers that Rich will run through later on, which we recommended for board approval.
Thank you, Mr. Sini. Mrs. Zockman.
The policy committee met what I thought was last Thursday, but maybe it was a different day. Finance was Thursday, but it was definitely last week. We began the first half of the 2000 series, which is a student series, and you'll hear more on that tonight with recommendations from the committee.
Great, thank you. Mrs. McCammon.
The Hanley Homes and Royal Building Committee continues at pace. We have selected 3 architectural finalists, and we're in the process of looking at the construction managers who have applied to our RFQ. And so we move forward. Thank you.
Terrific. Oxbridge had a meeting last week. We have a meeting every Thursday on specifics around construction. We're still on schedule to take over that building on or about June 9th. We're working through any supply chain issues with respect to furniture. I think we'll be good to outfit that school over the course of the summer. It'll be ready for the students. And then the deconstruction of the existing school will start almost immediately once we get that school emptied out. We're working through some switching issues from a technology standpoint. Jeff Adams and Mike Lynch and company have gone above and beyond to figure that out. And we continue to be so on target and under budget. No pressure, Jill, and Henley Homes and Royal
None taken.
renovations.
Mr. Janine,
Yes,
just
sure.
as that
Any
comes up
questions?
for a June 9th, just, I think we need to make sure the board has a vote to take possession of that from the town. So we just want to make sure we schedule that.
Yeah, it's a good point. It came up in a conversation I had as to temporary CO and moving and the fact that it's phase 1 and phase 2. So we'll work through that and bring it to the board around taking care, control, and custody of phase 1 with respect to the ed specs. Good, thank you. Good. Any other board committee reports? Okay. We will move on to the public hearing on the high school stadium lights. Thank you, all of those that have come and kind of participated as we've gone down this path. Just kind of a quick recap, as everyone knows, the agreement that was put in place after 5 years is up for review. So that is what we've been doing. We've kind of started the process. I don't know, Michelle, do you want to put up that timeline up there just so we can kind of refresh everyone's mind? So that's a great picture. Go to that next steps and timeline. Thanks, Michelle. So we are doing the public hearing. We have an agenda item that after we hear from the public, the board will continue our discussion around our role in filing an application for the zoning regulations and an application for any changes to the special permit associated with it. And then that's the timeline. The next meeting will have further discussion and decision. And then we'll work with the submission of the application with our land use attorneys through the planning and zoning application process. So just to recap, because I think it's important, the administration has come as requested to the board with a proposal in terms of what they would see are kind of uses and timing around the fields, Propodium and stadium lights. So we've had that. What we thought would be important is to hear from the public over and above what we need from a school standpoint in terms of the usage of those fields. So that's what we'll be hearing tonight from the public, anything over and above what the school builds around the schedule, and then anything over and above what the school uses the stadiums and the fields for goes through our normal use of school facilities process. So again, I think once the administration goes through the process of, and the board going through the process of applying for a change to the zoning based on our discussion and any changes to the special permit, the schedule will then be built around the needs from a school standpoint. And then as with our use of facilities policy, it'll be opened up to other community groups to use those fields. So I would ask if there's any additional board comments around that. Okay, good. Then Michelle will go to the public hearing part of it.
Will we start in person?
Yes,
Same rules as public comment?
yes.
Okay. For all participants, please state your name and address for the record log. You will have up to 3 minutes of comments. Anyone in person?
Please just come, yes, come up to the, if you want to line up somewhere, you can do that also.
My name is Albertus Vandenbroek, and I'm living on 15 Linda Lane, and I've been doing so for just about the last 50 years. I would like to rectify a misconception that has often been put forward over the years that people who do not wholeheartedly support any proposal with regard to the use of the athletic fields and stadium lights are against student athletics. I just want to mention that our family is part of the founders of the Darien Athletic Foundation, as is also another neighbor on Linda Lane, as is attested on the plaque on the stadium field. I've also contributed to the installation of the turf fields. And I'm proud to say that our granddaughters were top athletes in the sports teams at the school and have brought them to state championships. And our son Richard has been very instrumental in the organization and development of the Darien Lacrosse League. So anyway, to set the stage, student sports is not a side activity in our household. But there has to be a balance between the activities on the athletic fields and the requirements of undisturbed living in the homes right around the fields. The agreement that was developed 5 years ago, after extensive deliberations among the Board of Education, the school administration, and the neighbors, did accomplish that, with the exception of the management of the sound, to which I will come back later. In preparation of this hearing, I have communicated with the neighbors abutting the high school on Linda Lane and Middlesex Road, and there has been quite a turnover in recent years, with many young families with little children moving in. Continuing the agreement would be well received. And back in November, Dr. Adley said it has been working for the school, but recognizing the community spirit engendered by Friday night games, as mentioned by several of the people that we talked to also in our neighborhood, has made the neighbors open to the idea of a few more Friday night games to support this community spirit. He noted that in the past season, not all the available night games were even used, which makes us wonder if additional permitted night games are even necessary, or if the desire for more Friday night games can be satisfied by simply requesting from P&Z more flexibility in scheduling games rather than the rigid 2 per team program in place now. Neighbors are really indifferent to what team, if Darien is playing, but the total number of disturbed evenings does matter. Even though the new technology used keeps light from spilling beyond the field, please understand that the lights are still a nuisance because of the bright landing strip effect they create. However, irrespective of when lights are on and the number of games, the neighbors were unanimous in their judgment that the sound of games is the greatest nuisance and need to be addressed.
You're almost at time, just
Pardon
keep
me?
in mind. 3 minutes, you're almost at time.
I thought the hearing had no limitation of the minutes.
Yeah.
Comments
3 minutes.
has.
3 minutes we're adhering to.
I mean, I have to finish now?
Yes. Go ahead.
It's an unusual
finish.
situation. isn't it?
You had 15 seconds left. Go ahead, please.
No, we won't be able to do it in 15 seconds. Is it under the Roberts rule that we have here, or?
She outlined the public hearing rules when we started. Each person has 3 minutes to
I thought it
speak.
was related to the comment section, but not to the hearing section.
No, she outlined it when we started too. 3
It's
minutes.
the parliamentarian you have, but I can come back at the end of the meeting, I guess.
Excuse me?
I can come back at the end of this meeting. with the-
Yes,
again,
yes,
public comment.
yes,
And
yes.
finish up my
There's
story.
public comment at the end of the
I guess
meeting
I will
also.
have to do that.
Or you can hand us
Very unusual.
his material.
You can also send in your comments, email them in to us, please. Yep. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chris Harwick. I live at 108 Inwood Road in Darien. I am president of the Darien Junior Football League. I'm here again to state our request and to clarify our position regarding extended use for lights at Darien High School. We request the Board of Education submit an application to B&Z that only limits the time which lights can be operated that will comply with Darien land use regulations. There should be no further restrictions offered on the application that would dictate how our fields should be used. There must be clear delineation between the land use permit being sought to operate the lights and the operation guidelines, which should be formulated by the Board of Education and the administration with thorough input from the community, especially those that use the fields on a regular basis, like the DJFL. Why will we having more light? Why do we need more lights or more time for lights in the DJFL is the question. I've coached 2 sons through the program and will be coaching my 3rd in 6th grade this year. I also work in New York City. I have zero interest in being on the field at 9:30 at night. I have zero interest in dragging my tired and hungry 10-year-old home that late. But due to the demand and increased usage by the high school in recent years, we need the flexibility to, on occasion, push a practice later. Football is a unique sport. We have lowered our injury and concussion rates significantly over the last few years by spending a tremendous amount of time and resources on coaching proper and safe techniques. This takes repetition. This takes time. Canceling practices are not an option. So when we lose fields at Darien High School because of high school events that we are not necessarily know about, we are forced to consolidate teams onto one field with our narrow time frame. Multiple times last year, we had 6 teams and over 150 participants on one field. This creates unsafe and unconstructive practice conditions. With extended usage, we could easily bump out a couple of practices and smooth out the usage of the fields when conflicts present themselves. With our time constraints and the lights going off at 7:30, we are forced to use every last minute of our usage during practice, for practice. Breaking down the fields in the dark with a smartphone as a flashlight, as your only source of light, is unnecessary. Having our players search for their gear, take home the wrong helmets and phones. Some people in this board, I think.
You're almost at time,
Okay.
Mr. Harley.
Having parents search for their players in the dark with a very busy parking lot next door is unnecessary. The DGFL is not looking to add practices or bring younger teams that practice at Town Hall to Darien High School with added light usage. We are not looking to hold practices till
You're at-
9:30
you're
on a
at time,
regular
Mr. Harley.
basis. We
Thank you.
simply want the flexibility to adjust and smooth out our practices and game schedules for the safety and benefit of our families.
Thank you, Mr. Harley. Anyone else in the audience?
Tommy Bronca, 14 Shipway Road.
Owen Comey, 20 Saddle Ridge Road.
Hello, we are here to talk about or be part of the movement for longer light usage. Owen and I are both captains of the boys soccer team. I've played on the team for 3 years. I've seen the program go tremendously, but I have first-handedly experiences the disadvantages of not having extended practice time. While I acknowledge the importance of hearing and considering the opposition's position and truly believe that the world would be a better place if we all respected our opponents here, I truly do not understand why the discussion of having added light time is something that is worthy of so many people's time. In life, we all know that every decision we make has positive and negative effects. And clearly here, I believe that the positive effects of having extra practice time outweigh the negative effects greatly. Not only does extra practice time lead to a healthier student body, build community spirits, and allows for the ability to hold more night games, it also helps teams to perform better. Through my experience, I can confidently say that the boys soccer team performs better when we have a student crowd. However, we only have a student crowd when we are under the lights. As well, when it comes to playoff time, we play on the stadium field, and to be able to practice on that field is a necessity. Playing on the center oval is not the same to playing on the stadium field. And when it comes to that, we usually don't have time to practice on the field because of light usage and other teams having to use the field. It would be a great advantage to many teams if they're able to practice on the field they play on. And I believe it'll lead to a greater success in our team's outcomes. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking this evening.
Cece Chandler, 19 Peter Lane. Good evening. I'm currently a junior at Darien High School. I play varsity lacrosse, and next year I will be one of the girls' varsity soccer captains. I have lived in Darien my whole life, just a half of a mile from the high school. I started playing organized soccer in town in kindergarten and lacrosse in 3rd grade. My sisters did as well. We've spent countless hours, hundreds, on the school athletic fields. When we finally got lights at the stadium, it was such a big deal for myself, my family, my teammates, and my friends. Finally, we could have Friday night light games. This opened an opportunity for games to be more accessible to fans, especially for parents coming after work or a long commute, like my dad, my first ever soccer coach. Finally, we could be like every other town we played. I could only help but wonder why we couldn't have more games under those lights. It doesn't make sense that we can't play more games so that our family and friends can attend. We have winning high school championship teams every season, hundreds of youth involved in town sports, supportive parents who work more than an hour away. Why can't we have more opportunities to use these beautiful fields and lights more? This includes practices. There are nights when coaches can't make earlier times, and the lights would allow for extended practices. It doesn't make sense that we can't use the facilities we have right here in my backyard. I'm here to say, let there be more light. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out and speaking this evening.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Hopkins and I live at 27 Point Oatwoods Road South.
I'm Raina Johns. I live at 91 Raymond Street.
I'm Morgan Massey. I live at 31 Arrowhead Way.
I'm a junior at DHS, and next year I'll be one of the varsity field hockey captains, and I also currently play varsity lacrosse. For most kids in Darien, playing on the stadium field at Darien High School is the biggest stage they will see in their athletic lives. It's a place we dream of playing our entire lives. I grew up watching older girls on that field, and I thought of them as celebrities, and they inspired me to work hard to try and follow in their footsteps. A huge portion of the Darien community comes out and supports high school varsity games. Stepping foot on that field as a varsity player is one of the most thrilling things that has ever happened to me. I hope that the next generation of female athletes at Darien High School that inspires the great. I hope to be that next generation of female athletes at Darien High School that inspires the grade school age girls who just picked up a stick for the first time. Every once in a while, we get to experience that incredible stage under the lights, and it's magic. It's a moment in your life that you never forget, that your parents and grandparents will never forget, that 8-year-old boys and girls will never forget. It's a special event that brings us together as a community and makes Darien the special place that it is today. Please help us keep the magic of Darien athletics healthy and alive by letting us enjoy these lights more often and for longer periods of time. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for coming up and speaking.
I don't have any notes. My name is Guy Wasinski. I actually was the first person that submitted an application for the lights 15 years ago. I grew up in a little small town in New Hampshire, same town as Carlton Fisk, if you're a Red Sox fan, and all of my high school games, football, baseball, and soccer were under the lights. And when I moved to Darien, I was told that Chairman of the Board of Education lives right next to the school, and you will never get lights. When I sat on a 2002 committee with Bob Harrell, who was at that point the first selectman. And make a long story short, we started the process. I coached in the DGFL for 10 years. I guess my title was the vice president or what have you. We sent out 1,200 registered letters a year just to get portable lights at town hall and at the high school. So both football, field hockey, varsity, junior sports could play. I was a coach, okay? I had 3 kids who were dramatically hurt. 2 tore their ACL, and 1 probably would have played for 4 years in high school and in college. One of the best athletes I've ever seen, he basically got hurt because I was running a practice at Weed Beach because we couldn't practice under the lights on the field. So we would have to go to the parking lots because the assistant coaches were all working in New York. And we finally got to the point where we got portable lights, and we went through that whole process. Again, anybody within a mile or a mile and a half of either one of those fields got a registered letter. We went through it every year. I started this when my son was in 5th grade. My daughter was captain of the lacrosse and field hockey teams. Her senior year was the first time my youngest of 3 played on that field her senior year in a field hockey game. And it was a special moment for a lot of people. Mo Minikis, and I think it was a 1-goal game, and we were able to pull that off. And when the lights went on, all these people who complained and fought and everything else were saying, oh my God,
What's the big deal? And to the point where they said, this is a box of light, okay? This is going to be dangerous to get to the parking lot because everybody was scared of the light spillage. So my kids are in LA, Chicago, and my daughter
We're almost
will,
at time. guys.
my daughter will graduate from Richmond. She played lacrosse there. And I will just tell you, it's where a community comes together. And I would really look at this very, very seriously in terms of what was said and what has happened, because it's a very good thing. So thank you for your time.
Could you just go provide your address again? Sure. Thank you.
It's Guy Wasinski, and I'm at 111 Delafield Island Road in Darien.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking. Next person from the audience.
Vaibhav Muchal, 369 Middlesex Road. The past few years have been quite nice since we moved into this house about 5 years ago. I feel that the agreement which has been in place has worked well for both the school and the community. One thing that I'd like to talk about with the lights isn't really the issue. The lights have worked well. I think that, my daughter also plays field hockey. She's enjoyed using the field and having the lights available. What is a concern for us is the noise that comes along with the games, especially late in the night. The same daughter who plays field hockey also has sensory issues. So when things go late and it's noisy, as has happened a couple of times in this year, it gets very trying for her. So the idea that we would have more games, but potentially longer into the night, is a concern for us with our daughter being in high school, and for us and potentially for the other families with younger kids in the area. One other thing that I wanted to say is that just because we can doesn't necessarily mean that we should. It oftentimes feels in this town that anything to do with sports, then yes, we must do this because it's sports, because it's for the kids, and that's the end of the conversation. So I'd like for us to consider that just because we can, does that mean that we should? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking this evening. Anyone else in the audience?
Good evening. My name's Andy Von Kennel. I live at 5 Georgian Lane. And first, just thank you, Board of Education. I think many of us have watched you guys from home on Zoom going through the unthinkable, and we appreciate it. So a little context, I've lived in Darien 15 years. My wife and I moved here, I can't even believe it's 15 years now. We've raised 2 kids here, both through homeschool, Middlesex. Next year I'll have 2 at DHS. Admittedly, I didn't grow up here, and where I grew up, you pay a premium to live near the high school so you can hear the noise, be a part of that community, and enjoy hearing the band, the socializing, all of that. So on a very personal note, I am completely confused by what I moved into 15 years ago on that regard, okay? But I respect it and I get it. In our 15 years, my wife and I, who I'm here representing also, have volunteered on our own because we love it to this community. Darien Soccer Association, DY Lax, Darien Little League, DJFL, you name it, we've basically given time. Booster clubs, PTO, and the community and the kids that live here, it's really what makes this place so special, all right? And it's been great for us. And I think when I look at these lights, these are a wonderful asset for our town, a fantastic asset that are wildly underutilized today. And it's not necessary. And maybe some people think it worked for 5 years. Okay, but now is a great time for the administration to begin managing this process, do it like it's done other places. And I think what you'll see is more positivity in the community than anything that could even remotely be negative. It is that nice of an opportunity, and I'm actually excited that this group has the chance to influence and take this forward in the way that it needs to go. Because it is that important. And I couldn't be prouder. I've coached or know most of these kids. I see so many familiar faces. So I'm grateful to be a part of the community. I appreciate everything that you guys do. And I please ask you to give consideration to take control, manage it, understand what the rules are in our town. I can play paddle till 10 o'clock at night. We crank the music, play paddle at multiple locations. We can play sports until 9 or 9:30, get out of there quietly, and I can assure you, everyone will be so much better for it. So thank you so much for being here tonight, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for coming and speaking. Anyone else from the audience?
Hello, my name is Doug Wilson. I live at 43 Arrowhead Way in Darien. I've been a resident since 2003. I have 3 children in the Darien public school systems in elementary, middle school, and high school that are all involved in a diverse set of activities, from Theater 308, chorus, diving, football, and lacrosse. I'm here tonight to voice my support in favor of the Darien Board of Education and the administration for having full dominion and control over the lights that are located at Darien High School. I am opposed to the continuation of the standstill agreement that was agreed to 5 years ago that places arbitrary and unnecessary restrictions on these assets. The lights belong to the town of Darien. They were funded by Darien residents, and they should benefit the community, the entire community. The community and our families wants to use the fields. Our communities and our families need to use the fields. It is my understanding that the restrictions included in the land use permit that were included in the standstill agreement were negotiated amongst a limited group of landowners and the former superintendent of schools without the direct knowledge and input of the Board of Education or the community. Restrictions governing the size of the ball, the form of the stick, the age of the player, or the time that a match begins should end. It should be a matter left to the administration, the coaches, and individual parents, not a group of neighboring landowners or people that represent a special interest. In closing, I would like to reiterate that this should be a discussion about dominion and control over these assets and making sure it resides with the most appropriate governing body. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking this evening.
Good evening, Terry Bach, 7 Birch Road. I have 4 children, 1 through 3 currently in schools, 2 in high school and 1 in Middlesex. I've served multiple youth sports boards in town over the years. At the moment, it's Darien Little League and Darien Junior Field Hockey. I speak with my youth sports volunteer colleagues tonight to expand use of the lights as well as the fields. And actually, despite knowing being in town a long time and in these positions, this is actually my first time before the Board of Education. So for those of us that listen to some sports radio, and I think there's at least a few of us, first time caller, long time listener. I'm not going to repeat, I will focus on one challenge that my DLL colleague, Mr. Harwick mentioned, which is to pull these leagues off, the monster volunteer effort that it takes to pull those off in terms of coaches, umpires, referees, scorekeepers, all of that stuff, and expanded hours in a town that commutes to New York City for the most part is really, really critical to us as it relates to the hours. But tonight I wanted to offer a viewpoint a little bit adjacent to what you may hear. So when you think about expanded lights and fields, you think of our very optically obvious teams that we have to shut down the campus for. Football state championships, lacrosse, that sort of thing. There's actually a group that this may benefit more than all of those, which is young field hockey girls. So Darien Junior Field Hockey started 2 years ago. We've got a field hockey league in town that got sort of reborn with a group of us volunteers. We've doubled the size of the league, and we're operating with substantially the same amount of field time that we used to. So when you expand lights and you think about football teams and lacrosse teams and that sort of thing, it actually may be that the biggest beneficiary of expanded use of the fields and lights is actually K through 8th grade girls. So please do keep that in your mind as you ponder the expanded use of the fields and make more of it available to all of us. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for being a first-time speaker.
Jim Palin, 5 Hickory Lane. I'm not a first-time speaker. Yeah, I'm a parent, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a coach, I'm a member of the DJFL board and a member of this community. I've taught 6 or 7 different sports, some better than others, over the past 18 years in town. And I'm really here tonight. I wanted to speak and say thank you to the Board of Ed for raising this issue. I appreciate the fact that you're revisiting this permit after 5 years and that your intention is to go forward and apply for a new special permit. I would remind you all in the community itself that the stadium, the lights, the fields, the school buildings, including the new $60 million building we're building up on Mansfield, are all town-owned assets that were funded by residents and taxpayers, and in many cases, some very generous donors within our community. And that the care, custody, and control of those assets has been handed over to the town, from the town to the Board of Ed to basically carry out its role of education for all the youth in town. But I think it's also the responsibility of the Board of Ed, which you have in the past fulfilled and done a good job at that, is to make sure that when the board is not and the administration is not using these assets, these extremely valuable assets, that you make them available to the community. And I think what we're hearing tonight from many different members of the community, all different ages, students, coaches, members of different boards, is that there is high demand for the use of these assets. And so what I would encourage you is when you move forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission with a new special permit, you should be moving forward with a permit that asks for the use of the lights inside our land use regulations. Our land use regulations govern the time that the lights can go on and off and the noise and sort of other stipulations around intensity of use. Our Planning and Zoning Commission, we have former members here. I mean, they're a very talented group, but they're not experts in whether it should be a varsity player or a JV player under the lights. Last time I checked, when the lights go on, they're the same intensity regardless of the age of the students, regardless of whether it's a stick or a ball and whether the ball is a rubber ball or a leather ball. I would encourage you all and ask that you all move forward with a revised special permit and you seek permission to use them inside the land use guidelines as determined by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then the Board of Ed and the administration, like they have in the past, can manage the use of those facilities between school-related activities and community organizations and how they're divvied up in the times and number of games. That should be a board and administration decision, not a planning and zoning decision. So I thank you.
Thank you for speaking, Mr. Palin. Anyone else from a public standpoint here in person? Michelle, do we have any hands raised on Zoom?
We do.
Oh, we have Jen that's going to speak. Then we'll go to Zoom.
You guys are tremendous, by the way. Jennifer Montanaro, president of the Darien Athletic Foundation, 86 Maywood Road. I thought I'd just bring a little bit of lightness to this because it seems as if maybe it's, it could be a little contentious, So 5 years ago, something popped up on my Facebook today. I'll try to make this brief. 5 years ago, we rallied quite a bit of folks here called the Lights Brigade. And we were at the Shake Shack. And anybody that went to the Shake Shack, they would contribute 15% of the proceeds towards the Lights Brigade and to the efforts of the lights. So at the time, the then superintendent, we came up with this fantastic idea to do a lacrosse game. the skirts versus the shirts, the guys versus the girls, Lisa and Jeff would switch coaching. And we drummed up the idea of bringing the community in to let them know what our effort was for the lights. And if you hadn't been there, I just want to read you a quick summary of what I sent to then Superintendent Dr. Brenner, because he was, I would say 85% against this for so many reasons, and was so worried that maybe something could possibly go wrong or the weather wouldn't be right. So just bear with me on this. Dr. Brenner, I said that when I touched base after the game, I would have a positive report for you. The event went off without a hitch. It was a true community event, and the spectators were multi-generational, which was so fun to see. There was a buzz in the air that was pure joy and excitement. I'm not sure if the best part of the day was the surprise promposal Kyle Cornell pulled off asking Emma Lesko, or the camaraderie between Jeff and Lisa, or the fact that it ended in a tie and went to a Braveheart, only to have it be Kyle and Emma battle out for a goal. The silly boy went for the win, but he'll learn. I had planned for the inevitable, thinking that the players would disappear immediately after the game and not want to help with the youth clinic. I was pleasantly surprised to have to tell the boys that the clinic was over and we had lunch waiting for them. I think that they would have played lacrosse with the younger kids all day. This is the virtuous circle in the Darien Lax community that's known for, giving back to the younger kids in the program, which is one of the reasons that the program is so successful. It was a fantastic day enjoyed by the entire community, and thankfully the weather cooperated. So I bring this to your attention because this day was quite spectacular. We had vendors, we call them vendors, but they were local businesses. And they were approached by students, they were approached by parents that had nothing to do with their kids being on this field, nothing to do whether or not their kids would ever be under the lights. We all rallied together. But the greatest, I think, achievement was to see the community rally together to look into an entirely packed stands, crowds of people, all different ages, and seeing these little kids asking, will they then have the opportunity to also play under the lights? And did they have to wait until their senior year, until they got into high school?
You're almost at time, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. It's a community asset. And like Mr. Palin and all the other folks before me, it should be enjoyed by the community. So thank you. And we do appreciate all the time and the effort that you've put forward into this. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for speaking this evening. Michelle, we'll go to folks on Zoom.
Ms. Louise Wayland Brown, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to run through this because I've got quite a lot to say. The Darien School District and its athletics department should continue, in my opinion, to be the decision maker and, yes, master scheduler on the use of stadium lights on their property and be a good neighbour to the homes around it. It should also continue to prioritise the use of fields by our high school athletes. I don't know anyone disputing that, or the enjoyment gained from our high school sports teams. We are all grateful and enjoy this large gift from many constituents in town. It was given as a gift. It doesn't come with rights from any special interest group. My concern is in reference to comments made by DJFL and DAF board members tonight, wishing to expand the use of the stadium field and practice times for their own use at night, not the school's use, but their own, from the existing approved 7:30 p.m. time to a later slot of 8:30 with shutting down of lights at 9 p.m. This request specifically impacts middle and elementary school student activities. Once you grant approval of that extension for their use, you have zero input on which age group is playing at what hour, and that should be of great concern. In their presentations tonight to the board, those members have demonstrated a focus on start times suitable for parent coaches and a concern for multiple teams on the field. Some kids grow up to be professional athletes with no field lights in their youth. None of the speakers have commented on the well-being over time of a 4th to an 8th grader due to the extended practice hours at night. So I will. The Sleep Foundation has written about sleep, athletic performance and recovery. It states that whilst physical activity is an important component of a healthy lifestyle, making time for rest, recovery and sleep is part of that. Without sleep, the pathways to the brain that allow you to learn can't be formed. A loss of sleep is associated with a decline in cognitive functions such as decision making. And just as exercise can help improve or maintain mental health, sleep is important for mental health. Healthy sleep prevents irritability and decreases the risk of development such as depression. 9 p.m. is too late for our kids to be leaving these fields at 4th through 8th grade. Come on, be the leaders, be the decision makers, be their advocates. As the board deliberates on this subject, any board member who has participated in fundraising for or is part of those special interest groups, DJFL and DAF, should recuse themselves from the discussion, as they do not have impartial judgment. That is the practice of best ethics. Please note that I am very grateful for what DAF has provided for our town. This is a very specific concern about a specific age group of 4th through 8th graders in DJFL program. And these board members have not come to you and discussed how they would
You're
manage.
almost at time, Ms. Brown.
They have not come to you and discussed how they would manage that time or the element of sleep that those kids were going to get. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Could you just provide your address again?
102 Colony Road.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking this evening.
Thank you.
Michelle, anyone else on Zoom?
There are no more raised hands at this time.
Okay, we'll circle back with the audience, make sure we've covered everyone. All right, good. All right, thank you everyone for coming this evening. Thank you for speaking. It's important that we hear from the community, and I appreciate all that was said. And we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is a further conversation around the proposals for the use of the stadium lights. Let's get my documents in front of me here. So I think the conversation for the board this evening, in order to give guidance to the administration and our land use attorney to move forward with the applications, is twofold. If we go back to a review of the application and the documentation, there is section D from a regulation standpoint, used to accommodate town or school athletic or related activities or town not-for-profit organization or athletic activities. I think with respect to the request from the administration, keeping it specific to the town and not allowing games to be played or DHS to host FCAC or SEAC games has to be part of the conversation. I think having the facility we have and being part of the FCAC and the SEAC, if another stadium was to go down or out of service, I think it speaks well for us to have the ability to host those games, or for those athletes to use our facilities if they are available. And then with respect to the special permit around the lights and the timing of lights, I think it was well said in that we have to talk about the use of the lights within our land use regulations. I think the administration has proposed an extension of the lights to 8 p.m. during the week, 10 p.m. on Friday, allows starts of weekday games after 6 in the stadium, and also allows some additional or regular games under the lights. So this is specific to what the administration needs with respect to the high school sports. And then I think our conversation has to include what we've heard from the community in terms of the use of the, I like the word, the assets up there that we have in terms of the field and the lights. So I'll pause there for a moment and could open it up. Sure, Mr. Sini.
Could I just add one section to your
Sure.
comments? Because it was raised this evening, the public address system also.
Yes, good point. Thank you.
Down on page 10, O through Q. And there's audio specifications, and that should be a section under discussion.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Sini. And then just to back up on that, to get specific, so the public address system is O through Q with subsections there. We spoke about section D on use to accommodate town or school athletic related activities. And then if you have this document, the use of lighting is also where it's outlined in section F, A, B, C, and D in terms of the, I'll use the word schedule or limitations. It actually says time limitations for lighting facilities. So what we have to this evening, and we can have further discussion and move to a decision at the next meeting, is the guidance we want to give the administration and our land use attorney on the filing of the special permit application and also the change to the zoning regulation. So, and I will say, since I think it came up a couple of times, the board is not involved in the scheduling of these fields. That is strictly an administrative role along with the athletic director. And so they will build a schedule of these fields. And then over and above what we need the field for in terms of our athletic events or school events, it then goes to the use of school facilities. And there is a pretty detailed, and I think it works, kind of policy around organizations and a priority of how those organizations would apply to use the fields when they are available outside of when they're being used by the schools. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Dr. Adley?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I'll wait to see how the conversation goes.
Okay, good. So I'll open it up for board conversation.
So just to be
Yep.
clear, the questions we're answering tonight are, do we want to have visitors or users of the field who are outside the town?
Correct.
That's one question we have to answer. And if we think so, then we have to change, we have to request a change to the zoning regulations.
Correct.
Second question we have to answer is, what is the block of time that we want the fields to be open to the administration and the public?
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Thank you.
And we have to do that as part of refiling the special permit.
Correct.
Okay, but we'd, all the other language that we had in the special permit, we no longer have to have in there about who, what team, what.
Right.
all of-
Field
okay.
use, when lighting facilities are in use, time limitations for lighting facilities and evening games.
Okay,
I think what we would want to make sure we understand in terms of going forward with the application, it would be a red lined agreement done by the land use attorney that would turn all that over, what I would consider the management of the facilities and the scheduling of the facilities to the administration based on the usage of lights, based on what we agree to from a board, and that it adheres to the land use regulations with respect to lights.
okay.
If that makes sense.
And then the third component then is that the public address system needs to be updated to be more accurate. Is that correct?
Mhm.
The
Red line.
the items related to the public address system.
Right.
Okay, so that's really what's in front of the board right now.
Well, and that would need to be addressed if the board has any recommendations or none.
Right.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Hoffman. So John, just specific again to the public address system, just.
It's found on page 10. So when you look at audio specifications, it gets into the use of how the audio system is used within the facility.
Right.
And, you know, as I understand it, there are noise ordinances at state level and our local statutes refer to those state levels. So again, if we're violating noise or if we're within the confines of the noise ordinances, we shouldn't have to have special regulations within the special permit.
Agreed. Okay.
Directing the use of our sound system either. That would be up to the administration and.
Right, to adhere to the sound ordinances, side to the regulations. So,
Well,
okay.
to just draw a finer point on it, I think the question is, should it all be codified at a special permit level? Or if the administration chooses to make a recommendation, that's how they run the schools, that might be fine. But right now we have it codified and it is, it doesn't match state statute. So this is the only place in town where it sits like this.
Right.
So the question is, it's not per se to say there would be no restrictions, but those would be under care, custody, and control of the schools rather than held within a special permit.
Board questions, comments?
So I guess I'll start, you know, hearing feedback from the community, I think, and in previous board discussions, you know, this is a zoning issue. And I think we, as we summarized a lot of the details in terms of how the use of the facilities, we already have a policy in place in our facilities use policy. So I think to what we're dancing around is, what have we heard from the administration? And what have we heard from the community that would cause the board to make a recommendation for the administration to go forward and work with the land use attorney to make these modifications. Upon that, once we file an application, that agreement with the neighbors disappears. So that's also another, thing we should just solidify, that whether or not this board wants to have any sort of formal agreement with the neighbors. I would argue no at this time. I'll just throw, just to get the conversation started, I think 9 o'clock is a very suitable time for use of lights within this community. People are going to start wrapping up around 8:30 at night. I'm not getting into the nanny state of determining when or what time children need to go to bed. I think that's in the best interest of their parents, and not either in this board's purview or even the administration's purview. I think 9 o'clock is very considerate to the neighbors, and really not impacting the quality of life. Planning and Zoning Commission has different thoughts around that and the impact of the surrounding neighborhood. They will weigh in. But I think as, the entity that has care, custody, and control, we should get this back to what it truly should be. And that's a special permit around the use of lights at the facility, and the rest of the care, custody, control left with the administration.
So I appreciate that, Mr. Sini. Thank you. I know one conversation I had, I think with Dr. Adley and the land use attorney, was on the lights out time. So if it's at 9 o'clock, it does mean that the lights go out at 9 o'clock, so that practices would stop around 8:30 so people could get off the field, get to their cars. I mean, there's security lighting that needs to be there from a parking standpoint. You should always make sure that's the right lighting after these lights go down. And that's Mr. Lynch and facilities role. But just so it's clear, it's not the practice or the game start at 9 and it takes 30 minutes for people to get out of the way and then the lights go off. The lights go off at whatever time is agreed upon. And so then the practice will be scheduled accordingly.
Let me just finish.
Yeah.
And we also have to be careful to make sure that any amendments we make, we don't cut off any opportunity for Friday night lights until 10 as currently there. So,
well, that's where I was going to go. So your 9 o'clock, is that your individual guidance? Is that Monday through Thursday? And is there a Friday time? 10
as it is.
And is there a Saturday time?
No.
That's up for discussion. I haven't recommended that.
All right, we'll move over to Mrs. Achman.
So I will say I've thought a lot about this, I think lights might have been my first vote on the board, which feels like a forever ago, but lights were even longer ago than that. The crux of it seemed to always be that the neighbors were concerned that they would get kind of run over by the lights, and there was a trust issue. I don't really know any other way to explain it. And what I do think that the 5-year agreement was supposed to do was to show that trust could exist, right? We would put things in place, but it was never meant to be in perpetuity. And I think that's why we're at the review now. And what I would hope from the neighbors who have concerns is they understand that there is a mutual respect, there is a trust, there is a conversation to be had with the administration if there's a concern about noise or something. But the idea that we've locked it in a special land permit use has really kind of gone far beyond the scope of where we'd like to be. So I'm in favor of moving forward and letting P&Z rule there, let them really control land use. I'm not a land use expert. And I think the board should do that. And I think they should do that soon. I think the neighbors should be assured that I don't think that means that this administration or this board isn't open to having conversations. I think we've shown ourselves to be good neighbors and we've honored our word and our agreement, but that's where trust extends to a new point. I will say, and as much as I'm in favor with many of the speakers of moving forward, I do want to put a small caveat. The idea that I pay for an asset so I get to use it, we pay for all our town assets, right? And we govern them. Town hall is closed on Fridays, right? We pay for town hall, but the administration over there has made a decision that that's the best way to run their program. So I just hope within that there's still respect for the fact that the administration and the school may run their program and their care, custody, and control decisions. And it's not just, I shouldn't say we all, many of us here supported the lights and wanted to bring it to fruition. But I don't know that means we can use them endlessly. So as long as we can come up with something, another speaker said, finding out the balance between neighborhood living and living in a school, I think we should, but I don't think that needs to be codified in a land use agreement. And if anything, we've shown over the last 5 years that we can be held to our word, we're open to conversations. And I think it's time that we move forward with a new permit under P&Z And then any conversations about usage needs to go to the administration.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoffman. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I would just follow up, Mr. Sini and Ms. Achman, agreeing and disagreeing in a small part. I agree we should move forward. We should go to P and Z. I disagree we should have any time limit. I think the time limit should come later, and that should be administrative policy. I think we should move to whatever limit P and Z will give us for full use of the assets. And that's my comment. Thank you.
So
Mrs. Worm.
I am in agreement with moving forward. I just wanted to touch on the outside town use, since that's something we need to discuss, right? I think that that is something we need to open up to, because we use other towns' facilities as well. We are part of the larger community. You know, for the Turkey Bowl, we've gone to Stanford for a swim dive. We don't have a pool that accommodates. We have to move outside for that. I feel like we're part of the bigger community, and we need to allow others to use our town assets as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Worm. Is that over and above or beyond what the administration is recommending in terms of SCAC and SEAC playoff games?
No,
you're referring to other
no, I'm referring to the playoff games.
playoff games.
Yeah,
Okay,
playoff games,
thank you.
playoff games.
Thank you. Mr. Maroney.
Yeah, so I think there's some interesting thoughts on this. So Mr. Wisniewski brought up the point of that the RTM actually had a public hearing on this, and I was the chairman of that, or the acting chairman. I was the vice chairman of the Rules Committee, so then had to host that meeting, and it was kind of contentious as well. So I think there's some things that I'm kind of with Mr. Brown. I think we should just go to the land use restrictions and go to that, and then we worry about times later on. I don't want to specify a time at 8 o'clock, because we're going to argue all night about what the right time is. I think we should go to the time that we are allotted, and then we figure out what the best time is, and that can change over time. And so we're not bound by an agreement. Somebody, 10, 15, 20 years is going to say, why did they build 9 o'clock? It should be 8 o'clock. And then, and then they have to file a new permit. I think the other part for me that I heard last night or last meeting that I'm still struggling with is, we talked about honoring the spirit of the agreement with the neighbors. And I'm just questioning what that means. So if we're going to, if the agreement was originally X games and we're going to 2X or 3X, is that honoring the spirit? I'm not sure. So I think we have to be careful as to what we say we want to honor the spirit and to follow through with the honor of the spirit. And same thing with the times that the lights are allowed after the scheduled time from now, where we originally said 7:30. If we go to 9, I don't know. I'm not opining on it, but I'm not sure that abides by honor of spirit of the agreement. I agree with Mrs. Worm on the outside usage. I think, the students also were talking tonight, and they said, one of the thrills was to play at the stadium field. What a thrill it would be to play a championship game at your home field that no one in Darien has ever had the opportunity to do. So I think that would be a major accomplishment. I think the other part that I don't think we've discussed, and I'm not sure what can be done, is the noise. And I think the neighbors have brought that up, and I'm curious as to what we can do in the application around noise.
I think that goes to what the ordinances are around noise, what the ordinance may be that are in place for those places that have the clubs that have nighttime paddle and different other events too. I think, again, it goes to what are the land use ordinances.
Yeah. Well, but maybe we can go above and beyond those land use ordinances and try to become better neighbors if we can. I don't know. Just a question.
Yeah. So sorry.
This is good.
Get good at it by the time I leave. I think the hard thing is I hear you saying, like, let's not put any time restriction on it, but what restrictions can we put on noise, which is just an inconsistent logic to me. I think what happened is we had a gift of lights to the school, which we hadn't had for years. And then we wanted to be good neighbors, but there had been, for whatever reason, bad blood, and it wasn't getting done. So we came up with this answer, and for 5 years, we've lived by it. So we've shown we'll be true to our word. And now the question is, how do we move forward? I mean, you could open up the whole thing. I would say that's we should really just not talk about the spirit of the agreement then, because we're getting rid of the agreement. What we're saying is I think the Darien Public Schools is respectful to its neighbors. We're respectful to our neighbors at Tokenique. We're respectful to our neighbors at the high school. They have different activities. And so there's different conversations that need to happen. But I would like to pull this out of a land use agreement, to Mr. Sini's point, and not have this an issue laden in P and Z, and have this an issue over care, custody, and control of the schools, which we do every single day, right? We used to have bonfires at the high school. That was a care, custody, and control issue. It was not an issue that we took up with P and Z. We have homecoming, we have all these things. So fireworks, right? Oh, don't get me started on fireworks, please do. Going to take so much tonight. So, if the board wants to totally open it up, but I don't think that's what the administration is asking us to do. What I do think is we are reaffirming the right that we control this property. And in order to do that, we don't need it written in P and Z.
And I might just add, just as a point of clarity, sorry to jump in, but we do, as a part of an application, you do have to set what you want. You can't just say, hey, P and Z decide for us. So we got to come to a time.
Okay, so that's good. That's good clarity for everyone. I'll make sure we cover everyone. I'll go to Mrs. Best.
I basically will say I'm largely in agreement with most of what's been said. I think we should move forward. I agree that we should allow contests on our field that may not involve our teams, if that's how the season plays out. I think we've heard a lot of great comments tonight. I think we can change these parameters and still live by the spirit of the agreement in the way we move forward, even when we've taken more control of the decisions and not left it in a special land use agreement. I think we still can be respectful of the neighbors and their requests. And I think we also need to be mindful, to whatever degree it's our responsibility, of how the fields get used into the late hours. Some people have expressed those concerns also, but I think there are some really great, compelling comments about the camaraderie and the community spirit. And those are things that we should look for. We should try to make things possible where we can. So I'm on board.
Thank you, Mrs. Best. Mrs. McCammon.
Thank you. So I'm fully in agreement with removing the language that, in my opinion, doesn't belong in the special permit from the special permit. So that would include all of the restrictions on the who and how, as well as and the timing, as well as the inappropriate noise parts. Again, not because I think that we need to be noisy all the time, but just because it doesn't belong in here. I'm in agreement that we should open ourselves up to FCAC and CAC competitions. I am, love Friday nights. I grew up with Friday nights. And I think I could discuss what time the lights go Monday through Thursday. I think that 7:30 for sure is too early. I think between 8:30 and 9 would be fine with me to give. I just want to make sure teams have time to practice and then get off the field safely. And then Saturday, I think we would just leave open to what is needed. So I don't know if we can go and say as needed, or if we have to be more specific about a Saturday time in order to properly file the application. If so, I would say we maybe do need to put a stake in the ground. And then I would say 10 o'clock for Saturday as well, but with the idea that that is a rare occurrence.
As needed.
As needed. The last piece I would say is, in regards to the spirit of the agreement, one of the things that is in the special permit that I think we need to maintain, not in the special permit, but as a practice, is that neighbor committee that meets regularly. And so just saying out loud, there is a group that meets with Dr. Adley of neighbors, and wherever we put that, whether it's in administrative protocols, I just think it's important to keep an open dialogue with the neighbors as we transition into this new environment.
Thank you, Mrs. McCammon. Look, I think I think to some of the comments here, I caution referring to the spirit of the agreement if we are moving away from the agreement. I think what we've done, as long as I've been on the board, almost 8 years now, managing 7 properties, so to speak, is always to be good neighbors. And that is listening. I can count on less than one hand the amount of complaints I've gotten as vice chair or head of facilities. I've gotten more complaints about garbage and lawn maintenance and weeds than I have about, no, I've got no complaints about lights. I've gotten 2 complaints that I know about noise that were bumped up to the administration and athletic director and handled. I mean, there's a process to see, you know, what the students were doing. And so I think the goal is always to be a good neighbor. We're all neighbors and part of the community. There are schools and there are assets. So, you know, my view is, I think much is the same as the board. I'm in favor of moving away from the agreement, working to understand what the administration needs and what the community will use thereafter when the schedule permits, opening it up to outside organizations that can use the fields. I do agree with Mr. Senior. I think as a board, we have to come to some conclusion on the times and go to planning and zoning around that. I appreciate Jill bringing up the Saturday question, and I will also, just so we cover all 7 days a week, bring up the Sunday question. And that just might be a hard no, which is fine. I think everyone, I mean, a lot goes on up there on Sundays, but I'm not sure it needs to be lighted and go into the evening. So Mr. Brown.
So just to follow up to that point,
Sure.
Duke, Dennis had mentioned that we were constrained noise-wise by whatever the ordinance is. Do we know, or perhaps this is a question for our land council, what is the constraint by ordinance or by other regulation in terms of time? And that might inform a decision moving forward, please.
Yeah, and so great point, Mr. Brown, thank you. So we'll get that from the land use attorney again. I think there was some conversation when he was here as to what's a town versus what's a state and based on zoning, what a noise ordinance is. So we'll get clarity on that. Yes, Mr.
Just
Senior.
one clarification on weekends, you know, there, to Mrs. McCammon's point, there's random playoff games. And again, I just don't want to create any unintended consequences for the administration. You know, there's I remember having a football game on a Sunday in New Canaan, which is very, you know, it's late into the playoffs, but I know there are some quirks on Saturdays and Sundays that, you know, we should consult with Mr. Manfredonia before we come to a final conclusion. I'm not advocating like consistent use on Saturday nights, but there are like, you know, certain playoff games I know with football, but I'm sure with other sports that occur on the weekends sometimes.
Let me get some clarity around that, Dr. Adley.
Well, currently, we're not.
Currently, given the proposal, we're not planning on having those Saturday night games. Mr. Manfredoni is on the call right now, but we're not including that as part of the need for the school system at this point.
Okay.
I also say to the our neighbours who have been great neighbours, and I don't think that including the need for a committee, people can come to us anytime relatively, and we'll be responsive. We'll always be responsive. I don't think they're mutually exclusive ideas. That you know, that we wouldn't be good neighbors in that capacity. So anyway.
Mr. Manfredonia, how are you?
Hi, Duke. How are you?
Thank you.
Yes, so the current agreement allows us to use the field and the lights on a Saturday or Sunday when dictated by the FCIAC or CIAC. We have, as Mr. Orsini points out, have used the lights on a Saturday or Sunday during those odd playoff games. So I would obviously advocate for us to continue to do that on those games when the CIAC or FCIAC mandates us to have games on those 2 days.
So I'll ask someone of the resident expert, Mr. Sini. So would that be that specific in an application?
You would consult with our land use attorney
Yeah.
on how to draft that in,
Yep.
you know, so just
Good.
on these rare occasions.
Thank you. Mrs. Ackman.
So I would just offer, I think that has always been the case. And so, and now what we're saying is we'll let other teams, if it's not a Darien team, play. But I don't know that we want to open up every Saturday and every Sunday night and have like a shockwave go through our neighborhoods. I think what the superintendent has presented is reasonable. It is a big kind of step forward, certainly in trust and communication. I happen to agree with the superintendent. I don't know that a committee is the way to go. I think any neighbor should have the right to come and talk to the superintendent. I think that committee has done a lot of hard work. I think there are other neighbors who feel sometimes like they want their voices heard as well. So I think if we say neighbors, the administration deals with this, Mr. Manfredonia and Dr. Adley, that would be a better way to go than having a specific committee. And I think that what the administration proposed after looking at this now for multiple weeks, is really where I'm comfortable as a board member moving forward to P and Z. I think it really strips away the most restrictive clauses, which were probably not really land use clauses anyway, or appropriate to be there. And I think it returns care, custody, and control to the schools. And that kind of gives us a path forward without reigniting now a whole firestorm of like, well, maybe, or P and Z said that you could be open till 10. Why aren't you renting me your fields at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night? Like, I just don't feel like we're at that point yet. We're about to take another really big step, which will open up our fields, allow a lot more people to enjoy them and a lot more teams to enjoy them, because sometimes just scheduling a night game is really hard under the current restrictions. So I think we're meeting both goals and really continuing to engender trust among the neighbors, which I think is really what we're looking to do more so than the spirit of any agreement.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoffman. Anything else from the board members? Okay. So thank you again to the public for participating this evening. Thank you to the board. Oh, yes, please. John or Olivia, thank you.
I just wanted to say, I was intrigued because I think someone said during other comments that especially the Friday night games were like underutilized, like not all of the teams used 2 Friday night games. So I'm wondering if maybe that the restriction to only 2 per sport on Friday night. I'm wondering if that.
Say that again.
I'm wondering if because if this is the case that the Friday night games are underutilized, maybe we could consider changing the 2 per sport rule in this.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that's the goal, so that it would be available for multiple times. Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that point up. Yes, Olivia.
I mean, I can't speak as much.
Pull that away from him. Go ahead.
I don't know, I can't speak as much about policy, but just because we're here representing the student body and as ourselves in the student atmosphere, just kind of wanted to reiterate the importance of not only utilizing our assets like to support our student community, because also football games are, they're not just football games, sports games are also an opportunity for the rest of our student community to get involved in the sports process, including our band that the components there. But additionally, as a student athlete that consistently travels, Darien has put a lot of money and time into these lights in this facility and letting other schools access it, especially with other schools that don't necessarily have the super high tech lights that we have. It presents a really good opportunity for the rest of Fairfield County and the rest of Connecticut to come here and use the facilities that we have put so much time and effort and money into. And I just think that's a really important contribution to the rest of our state or slash county slash area.
Thank you.
I was looking specifically at the limitations on what type of music can be played. And I think one area where we might be able to
Hey, John, could you just make sure you're speaking on the microphone? Thank you.
is this on?
No.
No, is there a button?
I would Olivia, hello?
You see?
Am I on? Yes.
Yeah, we did it.
There are many buttons. Okay, I was just going to say, specifically about the type of music that can be played when, one thing that I have noticed, well, because the band goes to all the football games, is that sometimes there is music played over the PA during games, which is, I'm learning just now, is against this guideline. So maybe better coordination of what music happens, because I know sometimes we have the band plays at the same time as the PA plays music, at the same time as there's the announcer, at the same time as there's like a cheer. So I think maybe the compound effect of the music, we could work to coordinate that more, so that way there's less of an overall combined decibel level that's being projected out into the neighbors around.
Okay, thank you. Anything you want to add there?
No, we're good.
All right, good. Appreciate you guys understand that. So just to recap, because we will move on to the rest of the agenda, but again, good conversation. So at the next meeting, we'll have any further conversation and we need to come to an agreement as a board. Dr. Adley, I think we should have the land use attorney here at the next meeting.
It would be our intent to have him here and probably have a red line draft.
Okay, and have a red line draft that will circulate ahead, that will incorporate kind of comments from the board and an understanding of what the public also expressed this evening. Mrs. McCammon, anything you want to add? You're good with the recap.
Do we want to be any more specific about the timing, or we just want to see a red line agreement with a time in there? We didn't come to necessarily a decision. I don't know that we have to tonight, but.
You like the time?
I mean, I'm comfortable with the 9 o'clock.
Chair or myself? You and the chair, because you're going to be working with land use attorneys.
I'm comfortable with what we have proposed forward for ourselves, which is the 8 o'clock time and the 10 o'clock on the Fridays. That's what I'm comfortable with. That's our needs for the school system.
Okay, so then we should give him some guidance on community.
From a community
And you said
standpoint,
9.
I'm personally comfortable with the 9 o'clock, understanding some of the community needs, and the 10 o'clock. And then, we'll work with him on what this, to Mr. Manfredoni's point, what the specific need may be on a Friday or Saturday. And then I think the opening it up to outside, I think is somewhat specific to championships and playoff games with FCAC and CAC. And I think that kind of makes sense in terms of how we go forward.
Agreed.
All right, good. Yes, sure.
We're moving forward with the administrator's recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll have something, and then
We'll
we're
have a
looking
red
at
line.
striking any noise ordinance and letting state statute govern.
State or local planning.
And the
zone.
9 o'clock for the community.
The super recommended what? Sorry.
The super, well, but I think we have to balance is the I correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, you're recommending what your needs are, which is up until 8 o'clock. I think based on what I've heard, I would like to go till 9 o'clock just to make sure that the community, is able to schedule what their needs are once our schedule is built. That's how I'm approaching the 9 o'clock. Mr. Brown.
And I would just be curious to know what the actual statutory or other controlling
So
number is.
great point, Mr. Brown. So we'll clarify the noise and kind of your point around what are the statutory land use regulations around the lights, whereas we've got paddle that's going until 10 o'clock at night. So what's.
And it may well be 9 or 10, but I
Okay.
just
All right.
appreciate
Then
that
that might help us
information.
come to a more reasonable time that we agree to.
Sorry, last
Mrs.
question,
Ackman.
I
Sure,
swear.
go ahead.
So if we are going to go above and beyond the administration's recommendation, I'd like to hear from the administration what additional burden, staff constraints, budgetary implications there are for you, if any. Right, because when we rent out our fields, that means we have to have certain types of supervision. And if there's any constraints, we should just be aware of that as a board as we open it up. It may be that we affect our billing rates. It may be that there's no incremental costs, so we can hear it next time. But if there's any additional charge or expense to the district based on what you have planned, I'd like to know.
Or revenue.
Yeah, it's probably useful. If I take
Or
a wee
revenue,
bit
yeah.
of, for the next meeting with Rich and Chris, just to iron that out a little bit.
Okay, good. That's a good point. Thank you. All right, anything else? Good. All right. Thank you all for the conversation. Again, thank you for the public and for everyone speaking. We'll move on to presentations and discussions. Dr. Adley, a quick update on the status of schools.
Well, the quick update is that for these couple of weeks, the cases have increased. We had 26 new cases over this past weekend. Our health systems are not under pressure. Hospitalizations remain constant. The symptoms remain relatively low. Acuity is low, even though in the town and in the school system, the cases are rising. That is a fact. The State Department wrote the superintendents on Friday and shared that they want to share with the community that things are rising and what are we doing. I'm inclined just to share just a wee reiteration of what we are doing in our own district. I want to give people undue cause or that we have no need for that. We are working well. We'll just remind people of what we have in place at the moment at the weekend, our Friday communication. But over and above that, I mean, that's the big takeaway here. You can see that this is 79 cases. The last time it was 51 and 31 before that. this, which is part of your packet, those top two right-hand corner numbers are now 26 and 52. So you can see that the numbers, these were, this is the packet that you received. But now those numbers are 52 and 26. So those are increasing. That's probably not surprising to people. We're managing it well. And again, there's relatively minor impact on the healthcare system. So that's kind of where we are.
Good, thank you. Board questions or comments? All right, thank you, Dr. Adley. My friends at the end there, good? All right, raise your hand if I don't see you.
Well, now that the mic works, I think we're all.
All right, good. We'll move on to discussion and possible action on elementary parent conference days for the 2022-2023 school year. Dr. Tranberg.
Good evening, everyone. In your packet, there's a memo that articulates the recommended dates for conferences to end the first trimester and the second trimester of elementary. They're based on previous years with the same timeline. You'll also notice snow dates. There is an evening conference. This will be our third year for an evening conference scheduled for March 16th as an option. And we will continue to offer families the option to participate in person or via Zoom because it's given access to conferences for some parents that have not been able to attend in the past.
Great, thank you, Dr. Tranberg. Board questions or comments? Sure, Mrs. McCammon.
Because we are offering Zoom options, does that give teachers any reprieve on their need to take large blocks of time and has it provided us any flexibility in some of the large blocks of time it takes out of school time?
The greatest flexibility has been now that we have an evening conference. Not many people are opting for an evening conference because they're able to. Part of the reason was if people are working, it's difficult to get there, but it's not necessarily as difficult to take 10 or 15 minutes out of a day to schedule a conference via Zoom.
Okay.
So that's been noticeable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McCammon. Dr. Adley.
Mr. Chairman, I just would wonder, it's not a topic for discussion now, but just how much interest the board has in seeing this every year. That this seems just to be administrative in the sense that it's set up. Like we can bring it. It just seems that it was something we could be putting on a calendar and be done with.
Agreed.
So we approve we approve the calendar 2 years in advance. And that's part of the reason why these come up. Additionally, this coming up yearly is where we started to hear from parents that they wanted a night conference prior to the advent of Zoom. So, just know that it has yielded fruit in the past, and then you would have to be prepared with this 2 years in advance when we approve a calendar. Okay.
I think we could do that. We can also have an agenda item at our retreat to just, make sure we round out the discussion. So, Mr. Brown.
I would agree with Dr. Adley. This should be admin. I would only ask that if there's going to be a change to format, perhaps we're doing away with Zoom or evenings, just give us a heads up so we're aware to discuss. That is my only thought.
Thank you, Mr.
But you've agreed it for next year, so we're good.
Well, I'm not worried. Yeah, we're good.
Well, and evening is now contractual. So,
So
the board should just be fully aware of what goes on with this.
may I have a motion to approve elementary parent conference days for 2022-2023 school year, November 29th and 30th, December 1st and 2nd, snow date December 8th, March 15th and 16th, afternoon and evening, 17th, snow date, and March 23rd. Mrs. Best, seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor? Thank you. We move on to presentations and discussions. Discussion on the March 2021-22 financial report and possible actions on budget proposed transfers. Mr. Rudel.
So this is the financial report through March. We are projecting a year-end surplus of $664,287, which is about a 0.62% of our budget and about $12,000 more than the previous month. The general education RCs are a positive $116,000. The special education RCs are a positive $546,000, which is primarily due to excess costs. And the COVID RC is a positive $1,700. Again, we have about $1,085,000 in total COVID expenses and ARP expenses. $1,025,000 of that is the grant, and then there have been transfers approved of about $61,000. Salaries are forecasted at a positive $183,000. The primary reasons are student interns at 48,000, the portion of budget control which remains unused at 43,000, and then we have some savings in some clubs and salary savings. Operating is forecasted at a deficit of 144,000. That is primarily due to some items that are up for transfer today: custodial supplies, care grounds, fire alarms, and electrical materials. We still have the deductible for Storm Elsa. We have received 100% reimbursement for Storm Ida and Elsa. We do have a placeholder for the library redesign study at the high school, middle school, and Tokenique for 60,000, and then some small savings in materials, travel, PD, and then COVID supplies. Fixed is a positive 150,000. It is primarily due to health insurance. We did have some census changes, which yielded some savings, some small savings in vision insurance and life insurance as well. Transportation shows a positive 30, and that's primarily diesel fuel. And then we have some savings in workers' comp, general liability, and student accident. Revenue, again, is a positive 519,000. That's primarily driven by excess costs, which is a positive 547,000. And then we do have a slight negative balance in ELP tuition at $39,000. So there are 4 transfers we're asking for approval for. The first is for $22,150. This is for some fire alarm repairs that were noted during the semi-annual inspection, the high school, middle school, and then central office in this building. We are recommending taking the funds from the savings and diesel fuel. Cara Grounds, we are asking for a transfer of $60,000, primarily for some irrigation repairs and some maintenance to some employees that are out on leave, and primarily taking that from some savings and health insurance as well as diesel savings. The third item is for $18,000 in custodial supplies. We have seen a large increase in cost in stripper and wax and some other custodial materials. We are asking to take that from some savings and legal fees. And then $27,000 in electrical materials. We are asking for that to come from census changes in health insurance, and then the savings in the adult ed cooperative with Stamford Public Schools. And this is for some wiring that needs to be done at the middle school and Tokenique.
Thank you, Mr. Rudel. Board questions or comments? All right. May I have a motion to approve the March 2022 budget transfers? Mr. Sini, second by Mrs. Worm. All those in favor? That is unanimous with everyone here, right, Mrs. Best? Thank you. We will move on to, I'll read this once. Further discussion and possible action on proposed revisions to Board of Education Policy Series 2000 Administration. 2100 Goals of Administrative Body, 2210 Duties of the Superintendent, 2220 Recruitment and Appointment of the Superintendent of Schools, 2230 Superintendent's Contract, 2240 Superintendent of Schools Opportunities for Development, 2250 Superintendent of Schools Evaluation, 2260 on Availability of the Superintendent, 2310 Administrative Team, 2410 Dissemination and Implementation of Policies and Administrative Regulations, 2420 Uniform Treatment of Recruiters, and 2610 Annual Report of the School District. I will turn it over to Ms. Sion and Mrs. Achman.
So I elided our work when I gave our update. This is the 2000 series, which is administration for approval. Our meeting focused on the first half of the 5000 series, which is students. I did not receive any questions. There was one outstanding question regarding whether we wanted to keep the word written in the superintendent's evaluation. It remains there currently. I didn't hear anyone wanting to strike it or actually support it one way or the other. It's been a board discussion in the past. So if anyone has thoughts, they can let us know tonight. If not, we can move forward with approval.
Board questions or comments?
Seeing none, then I'd make a motion to approve
Okay.
as recommended by the policy committee.
Okay. What's the,
You want to do it that way? Or you want to do it too? A motion to repeal and a motion to approve.
Right.
So I would take it at personally, I would do it as a motion to approve the memo, which dictates what we'll do, and we can do it in one vote. But
okay.
elsewise, we got to do it
Is that everyone
group by
comfortable
group,
with
and there's
that?
repeals and revisions. So I would do it as the memo states in April 6, 2022.
Yep.
We can do one vote. So I have a motion on the table.
All right. Second.
I'm sorry,
Good.
what was it written in the script, like the difference between the process. I'm sorry to hear that.
No, that's all right. It's just a motion to approve the Board of Ed Policy Series 2000. Then a motion to repeal board policies 2100 goals of.
I think
administration.
Mrs. Parent just did it multiple rather than taking it one as a
Okay, so
memo.
I would second the motion.
Yep, second the motion. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Ackman.
Sorry, who was the person saying?
Mr.
John.
Sini and.
Tara.
and-
I made the first, John
Mrs. Ackman.
second, and then it was unanimous.
Good, thank you. Mr. Rudel, annual review, possible action on reciprocal agreement on use of the facilities with the YMCA. It's hard to believe years gone by and
So this was
for
the-
another discussion, but good.
This was the first year of the agreement
Right.
between the YMCA and the district. It has worked out very well. The Y made available for use their swimming facilities, including Sundays. They also made available gymnastic space. We provided a lower in-town rate for the summer camp and provided available hours for gym space. They did reimburse us for all custodial overtime costs. So in total, the district saved about $38,000. We did reach out to Jennifer Gardner, the CEO of the Darien Y. She agreed. It worked out very well. It seemed to work out well for both sides. We are recommending extending it another year.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Rudel. And thank you for all the work that was done behind the scenes to get this to where it's at. Any questions or discussion on the YMCA agreement?
Just a quick question.
Sure, Mr. Sini.
Rich, when you look at the rate per hour or daily rate, I'm not sure how you bill them. Do we have an escalation in our next year's budget for revenues? And is that does the agreement encompass any?
So what we bill them is the actual cost of the custodian who covers for that time. So they'll pay a little bit more next year because the custodial agreement will likely go up. But there's no net revenue. It's just we're not now absorbing those costs.
And what about the facilities equivalent fee that you would charge another group, if you will? Are you
So
taking account?
So yeah, the facility rate was approved in the budget at a 4% rate increase.
And this encompasses.
So we don't bill them a facility use unless they go above the 2,900. If they go above the 2,900, then they would have to pay the 4% increase.
Thank you.
Yep, good. Thank you, Mr. Sini. May I have a motion to extend the reciprocal agreement on use of facilities with the YMCA for the 2022-2023 school year? Mrs. Worm, second by Mrs. Best. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to personal items, appointments, resignations, and retirements. Mrs. Sion?
Yep, some very sad news about the retirement of Mike Lynch in June.
Thank you, Mrs. Sion. Mr. Lynch isn't here. Hopefully, he's not listening at this hour. I personally, and on behalf of the board, just extend a thank you to Mr. Lynch, AKA MacGyver. In my years on the board, he has done an incredible job of maintaining, fixing, and keeping our facilities up to standards that I think we all appreciate. He has been instrumental in all the plans and all the work behind, and has gone over and above the work that he's done on the Oxridge school build, and he's already been instrumental in helping the Hindley Homes and Royal builds too. So a big thank you to Mr. Lynch for all he's contributed to this district. I think he's just one of those folks you can always count on and rely on, and it's just well respected. And I think all the architects we've had in here, all the engineers we've had in here, all the work we did on a master plan, the constant theme was how well our buildings were maintained and the conditions with which our buildings were in. Those of us that do a tour and those of us that are in and out of the buildings, they always look great. And it's not easy to keep up with the acreage and the size of the buildings and the age of the buildings we have. So thank you, Mr. Lynch. Hopefully we can celebrate even more before he goes. So anything you'd like to add?
Well, I appreciate your comments about this distinguished employee, and it also says he's a very loyal, proud, hardworking employee. I will miss him, and the district will miss him, but we wish him well in his decision. Thank you.
It's a guy that just keeps the plow on his own pickup truck to help out when we don't have the trucks or the resources to do it. So he's just one of those get it done guys. So
we couldn't bribe him in any way.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. What?
We couldn't bribe him to stay another year.
Thank you for that question. We tried. not to say maybe as a consultant, but we tried, and his wife has been retired for about 2 years now. So I think that pressure has ramped up, and he's on to grandchildren. I think everyone's out of the house from what I understand. So, you only go around once, so take advantage of it and enjoy it. But a big thank you to Mr. Lynch. So thanks for asking that. First question I asked. All right, we will move back over, Michelle, to public comment. We will start out with our friends in the audience. Please come up again. Please, sounds repetitive, but for our records, name, address, and Michelle, do you want to kick it off again, please?
Absolutely. For all participants, please state your name and address for the record log. You will have up to 3 minutes to comment.
Yes, my name is Albertus Vandenbroek, and I will start in 3 minutes. And I was very pleased to hear also that the board is interested in a kind of cooperative effort with the neighbors, but I hope it will extend beyond 3-minute comments. Be allowed. Anyway, I was left over at a point that has been mentioned there, but not much actually further on discussed, and that is the unanimous agreement also in the judgment of the neighbors that the sound of games is the greatest nuisance, and it needs to be addressed. Now, games create the greatest sound nuisance from the PA system, the crowd noise, whistles, air horns, and car horns. And some of these, like crowd noise and whistles, come with a game and can only be addressed by maintaining a limit on the number of games. But the biggest sound problem pertains to the volume of the PA sound, the playing of the pre-recorded music during the week, as well as also, I want to emphasize, the content of the pre-recorded music at the warm-up times at the teams. The content of the songs with swearing and lyrics totally inappropriate for the audience is reprehensible. And as a Board of Education responsible for the welfare of young students, it deserves your highest priority. Neighbors also want to make a distinction between activities taking place on weeknights versus Friday nights. The sound of games is most disturbing on weeknights when young children have their dinner and early bedtime. The older ones are doing their homework, and more people are now working from home. In exchange for supporting a few more Friday night games, we would ask that the use of the PA system and warm-up music be preserved for Friday nights. On Friday nights, the PA system has to be better controlled and the music content needs to be monitored. The new sound system that was installed has the capability to adjust the sound level for the spectators in the field and does not need to reach the whole of Fairfield County. Now, if the weekday sound issue is resolved, the neighbors are fine with the weeknight GAS games expanded to 8 p.m. Now, at the April 6th meeting, the school administration presented a slide comparing the stadium light practices at neighboring schools. Well, only Greenwich and Staples have a similar local environment to Darien and a considerably stricter application of rules for use of lights. Now, as illustrated, I will show you some of these slides also here. New Canaan, Wilton, and Weston are totally unlike Darien in the location of their athletic fields and should not be used for any comparison. For reasons discussed in the past and also illustrated in the slides that I mentioned, neighbors are against hosting FCIAC and SEAC playoff games that do not involve DHS. Actually, even our own Turkey Bowl has been moved to other fields because the town's locale of the stadium cannot handle those games. The challenges imposed by having our athletic fields right up on the residential properties are unique and unfortunate, but with a cooperative attitude can be overcome, and we are most willing to participate in that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back and finishing your comments. Appreciate that. Michelle, anyone else in the audience?
Anyone else in person?
Sure, please come up. Thank you.
I'm Janice Lockhart. I live in high.
Could you, Mrs. Lockhart, could you use the microphone right there at the podium? Thank
I
you.
live in High School Lane, and I've lived here since the 80s. The traffic is tremendous on High School Lane. The school handles your traffic on your games, but it does not handle the traffic on the neighborhood. And it is out of control. The speed limits are that students go by is very fast and it's dangerous. The night games are very concerned about security. Over the year, I have handled help with a rape case. I am very, very concerned about how it's managed at nighttime after games. And I think, unfortunately, we are part of poor planning in the past, and we need a compromise to respect the neighborhood, and I know the needs of the school.
Thank you, Mrs. Lockhart.
I just, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just didn't hear what Ms. Lockhart said just about she'd been supervising, what did? Yeah, I was just clarifying what you said because Madam, you said that you were, you'd sort of overseen or heard or something about some sort of case. I didn't catch that word.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch.
You had mentioned about the roads and the busyness of it, and that over the years you've seen some things happen or otherwise. Maybe I missed.
Concerned about the nighttime management, I
Is that-
believe is what Mrs. Lockhart
Yes,
said.
yes.
Is there a specific incident
Yes,
you
it's
referenced?
not, you manage it well during the game. It's after the games that the problems have concerned, that have occurred.
You mentioned a
It's-
specific.
The police will clear out traffic, and then oftentimes what's left behind is where the problems happen.
Mrs. Lockhart, you mentioned a specific incident that you'd been involved in. Is there anything we need to know or hear more about that?
It happened a number of years ago.
Okay.
But I am also always aware of problems.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Lockhart.
Thank you.
Let's see any more in person. Michelle, do we have anyone on Zoom?
There are no raised hands at this time.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
okay, go ahead. Good.
Miss Louise Waylet Brown.
Can you hear us and see us, Mrs. Brown? There you go.
I'm unmuting her now.
Okay, go ahead. You're ready.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm disappointed in the board's decision tonight based around stadium lights, specifically with reference to the capping of a limit and going against the wishes of the superintendent, who gave you a recommendation of 8 o'clock as the finishing time. Yeah, just very disappointed, but I guess you're not the ones the next morning that will have to face irritable and sleep deprived elementary and middle school people, are you? Anyway, yeah, very great shame. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom, Michelle?
There are no more raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you everyone for participating in person and on Zoom. Thank you for the public hearing and the discussion. May I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Worm, second by Mr. Sini. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all. Have a good evening.